Dr. Sarah Chen stepped off the transport shuttle with trembling hands, her medical bag clutched tight against her chest. The Kepler station stretched endlessly in all directions, its corridors buzzing with alien life forms she had only seen in textbooks. After 6 years of xenobiology studies on Earth, nothing could have prepared her for the overwhelming reality of being the newest intern at the galaxy's most dangerous research facility. The station coordinator, a tall Valdorian with silver skin and forearms, greeted her with what passed for a smile among his species. "Welcome to Kepler Station, Dr. Chen. I am Administrator Zektar. We are pleased to have our first human researcher join our team." His translator device rendered his words in perfect English, though Sarah could hear the underlying harmonic tones of his native language. Sarah nodded nervously, trying to appear more confident than she felt. "Thank you for this opportunity. I've studied your research papers extensively. The work you're doing with extreme xenoforms is groundbreaking." Zektar's expression shifted slightly and Sarah caught a flicker of something that might have been concern. "Yes, well, we should discuss your assignment. Follow me to the briefing chamber." As they walked through the station's main corridors, Sarah marveled at the diversity of species around her. Crystalline beings from the Andromeda sector floated past, their bodies chiming softly with each movement. A group of insectoid researchers chittered in rapid clicks as they examined datapads with their compound eyes. The air itself seemed to shimmer with different atmospheric processors maintaining suitable environments for dozens of different life forms. They entered a secure briefing room where several other researchers waited. Sarah recognized a few species from her studies, but others were completely foreign to her. The mood in the room felt tense and conversation stopped as she entered. "Colleagues," Zektar announced. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen, our new human researcher. She will be assigned to study Chamber 7. A collective silence fell over the room. Sarah noticed several researchers exchange glances that seemed distinctly uncomfortable. A reptilian scientist with scales that shifted from green to deep purple spoke up in a voice like grinding stones. "Administrator, with respect, study Chamber 7 houses Subject 47. Perhaps the human would be better suited to one of the less volatile specimens?" Sarah's curiosity piqued. "What exactly is Subject 47? Zektar's 4 hands moved in what Sarah was learning to recognize as a nervous gesture among his people. "Subject 47 is a creature we discovered on a dead world in the Outer Rim. It appears to be the sole survivor of an extinct species. We have been unable to establish any form of communication or cooperation with it for the past 18 standard months." "What makes it so dangerous?" Sarah asked. The reptilian researcher, who had introduced himself as Dr. Vexcon, pulled up a holographic display. The image showed a creature that defied easy description. It stood roughly 8 feet tall, with a muscular humanoid frame covered in what appeared to be living shadow. Its face was angular and predatory, with eyes that glowed like molten gold. Most striking were the blade-like appendages that extended from its forearms, appearing to be made of some kind of organic metal. "It has killed 17 researchers," Dr. Vexcon said bluntly, not in rage or fear, but with calculated precision. "It seems to study our behavior, learning our weaknesses. We have contained it in the most secure chamber on the station, but every attempt at contact has ended in violence." Sarah studied the hologram, her scientific mind racing. "Have you tried different approaches? Non-threatening postures? Perhaps it's responding to perceived threats rather than initiating violence." And gaseous being near the back of the room, speaking through a specialized communication device, interjected with what sounded like static. "The human does not understand. This creature is beyond reasoning. It is death incarnate." "Nevertheless," Zektar said, "Dr. Chen has been specifically requested for this assignment. The Galactic Research Council believes a fresh perspective might yield different results. Her species' renowned adaptability and unique problem-solving approaches may prove valuable." Sarah felt a mixture of pride and terror. She was being given the chance of a lifetime, but it might literally be the last chance she ever got. "When do I start?" "Tomorrow," Zektar replied. "You will observe from the secure observation deck initially. Under no circumstances are you to enter the chamber itself without authorization from myself and the safety committee." The briefing continued with technical details about the station security protocols and emergency procedures. Sarah learned that Study Chamber 7 was equipped with multiple containment systems, including energy barriers, gas delivery systems, and as a last resort, emergency jettison capabilities that could launch the entire chamber into space. That evening, Sarah sat in her assigned quarters, a modest but comfortable space that had been modified for human habitation. The walls displayed a real-time view of space, showing the swirling colors of the nearby nebula that gave Kepler Station its unique purple lighting. She reviewed every file available on Subject 47, studying the creature's behavior patterns and the failed attempts at communication. Most approaches had been standard xenobiological protocols designed for creatures with recognizable social structures or communication methods. The researchers had tried mathematical sequences, musical tones, visual patterns, and even pheromone releases based on known universal principles. Each attempt had been met with either complete indifference or sudden lethal violence. What struck Sarah as she reviewed the security footage was the creature's eyes. In every recording, those golden orbs seemed to track the cameras with an intelligence that was unmistakably sentient. This wasn't a mindless predator or a frightened animal. This was a being that was thinking, planning, evaluating. She noticed something else that the other researchers seemed to have missed. In the moments before each violent response, the creature's posture would shift subtly. Its blade appendages would extend slightly, its stance would lower, and those golden eyes would narrow. It wasn't attacking randomly. It was responding to something specific in each researcher's approach. Sarah spent hours analyzing the body language and positioning of each researcher who had attempted contact. Slowly, a pattern emerged. The creature responded violently whenever the researchers displayed what humans might recognize as aggressive or dominant behavior. Standing too tall, approaching too directly, maintaining prolonged eye contact, or making sudden movements all triggered defensive responses. But there were also moments, brief seconds in some recordings, where the creature seemed almost curious. When researchers moved slowly, kept their distance, or showed what might be interpreted as submissive body language, Subject 47 would tilt its head slightly, those golden eyes tracking with what looked like interest rather than hostility. As Sarah prepared for sleep, she couldn't shake the feeling that everyone had been approaching this wrong. They were treating Subject 47 like a specimen to be studied, rather than a being to be understood. Tomorrow, she would have her chance to test a different approach, one that might finally bridge the gap between species and unlock the secrets of the galaxy's most dangerous prisoner. Sarah arrived at Study Chamber 7 early the next morning, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and fear. The observation deck was a marvel of engineering, with transparent aluminum walls that provided a clear view into the containment chamber while maintaining absolute security. Multiple layers of energy shields hummed almost inaudibly, and she could see the various weapon systems positioned around the chamber's perimeter. Dr. Vexcon was already present, his scales shifting to a nervous yellow-green pattern. Dr. Chen, I must advise against any direct interaction attempts today. Simply observe and familiarize yourself with Subject 47's behavior patterns. Sarah nodded, though her mind was already racing with plans. Of course. I want to understand what we're dealing with before making any moves. The chamber itself was surprisingly large, perhaps 50 meters square with walls that reached 20 meters high. The environment was kept at standard atmospheric conditions, though various sensors could adjust temperature, humidity, and air composition as needed. In the center of the space, sitting motionless in what appeared to be a meditative pose, was Subject 47. Seeing the creature in person rather than through recordings was breathtaking. Its form seemed to absorb light, making it appear as a living shadow despite the bright illumination. Those golden eyes were closed, and its blade appendages were retracted close to its forearms. For several minutes it remained perfectly still, giving no indication that it was aware of being observed. How does it sustain itself? Sarah asked. I don't see any feeding apparatus or waste disposal systems in the chamber. We have attempted to provide various forms of nutrition, Dr. Vexcon replied. It ignores all offerings. Medical scans suggest it derives energy through an unknown metabolic process, possibly related to ambient radiation or electromagnetic fields. Sarah made notes on her datapad, studying every detail of the creature's form. Up close, she could see that what appeared to be shadow was actually an incredibly complex pattern of microscopic structures that seemed to shift and flow like liquid mercury. The creature's breathing was so subtle it was barely detectable, and its musculature suggested strength far beyond what should be possible for its size. Has anyone tried simply sitting with it? Sarah asked. Not approaching or attempting to communicate, just Being present? Dr. Vexicon's scales rippled with what Sarah was learning indicated confusion among his species. To what purpose? It shows no interest in passive observation. Sometimes understanding begins with patience, Sarah said. She was thinking of her grandfather, who had taught her to work with difficult animals by first gaining their trust through non-threatening presence. As if summoned by their conversation, Subject 47's eyes suddenly opened. Those molten gold orbs turned directly toward the observation deck, and Sarah felt as though she was being examined at the molecular level. The creature's gaze locked onto hers specifically, ignoring Dr. Vexcon entirely. For a long moment, they stared at each other across the barrier. Sarah forced herself to remain calm, keeping her posture relaxed and non-threatening. She blinked slowly and tilted her head slightly to one side, a gesture that was submissive in many species' body language. To her amazement, Subject 47 mirrored the head tilt. "Did you see that?" Sarah whispered excitedly. Dr. Vexcon's scales had shifted to deep purple, indicating alarm. It has never responded to observation before. "You should step back from the window." But Sarah remained where she was. Carefully, slowly, she raised one hand and placed it flat against the transparent barrier. Subject 47's golden eyes tracked the movement, and after a moment's hesitation, it stood and approached the wall. The creature moved with fluid grace that belied its size and apparent mass. As it drew closer, Sarah could see more details of its extraordinary physiology. The shadow-like surface wasn't skin at all, but some form of adaptive armor that responded to light and movement. Beneath it, she caught glimpses of what might have been bioluminescent patterns, like constellations hidden beneath storm clouds. Subject 47 stopped directly in front of Sarah, separated only by the barrier. Slowly, deliberately, it raised its own hand and placed it against the wall opposite hers. The gesture was unmistakably intentional, a clear attempt at communication. "Fascinating," Sarah breathed. "It's trying to make contact." Dr. Vexcon was speaking rapidly into his communication device, alerting the security team to the unusual behavior. But Sarah tuned him out, focusing entirely on the creature before her. This close, she could see that its face, while alien, held an unmistakable intelligence. Those golden eyes weren't the flat predatory gaze of a mindless killer. They were the eyes of a being that was lonely, isolated, and perhaps desperate for connection. Sarah began to move her hand slowly across the surface of the barrier, and Subject 47 followed the movement with its own hand. When she traced a simple circle, the creature repeated the pattern. When she drew a straight line, it mirrored that as well. They were communicating through the most basic form of visual language, and it was working. "It's not violent," Sarah said, her voice filled with wonder. "It's been defending itself. Look at its posture. This is curiosity, not aggression." Over the next hour, Sarah and Subject 47 continued their primitive communication. The creature proved remarkably quick at understanding and repeating patterns, suggesting a high level of intelligence. But more importantly, its body language remained open and interested throughout the interaction. When the morning shift ended, Sarah found herself reluctant to leave. As she stepped back from the barrier, Subject 47 remained where it was for several minutes, its hand still pressed against the wall. When it finally returned to its meditative position in the center of the chamber, those golden eyes continued to track her movement until she was out of sight. The debriefing session that afternoon was intense. Administrator Zektar listened carefully as Sarah described her interactions, while Dr. Vexcon provided skeptical commentary about the risks of anthropomorphizing the creature's behavior. With respect, Dr. Chen, Zektar said, "You have made remarkable progress in a single session. However, we must be cautious. 17 researchers have died because they underestimated Subject 47's danger. I think they died because they approached it as a threat to be contained, rather than a being to be understood," Sarah replied firmly. "Every violent incident occurred when researchers displayed dominant or aggressive behavior. This creature isn't evil, it's scared and alone. You believe it can be safely approached?" another researcher asked. Sarah considered carefully before answering. "I believe it wants to be approached safely. There's a difference. It's been trying to communicate with us for months, but we've been too focused on our own protocols to listen." That evening, Sarah requested access to the station's xenolinguistics database. She spent hours studying communication patterns from dozens of species, looking for common elements that might bridge the gap with Subject 47. What she found was encouraging. Many successful first contacts had begun with exactly the type of simple visual communication she had established, but she also discovered something troubling in the historical files. The dead world where Subject 47 had been found showed clear evidence of massive destruction. Entire cities had been reduced to radioactive glass, and the planetary ecosystem had been completely devastated. Whatever had happened to Subject 47's species, it had been catastrophic and violent. This creature wasn't just alone on the station. It might be the last of its kind in the entire universe. The weight of that realization settled over Sarah like a heavy blanket. No wonder it had reacted violently to perceived threats. It had already lost everything once. As she prepared her report for the next day's activities, Sarah made a decision that would have horrified the safety committee. She was going to request permission to enter Subject 47's chamber, not to study it like a specimen, but to meet it as one sentient being greeting another. The creature had shown her trust by responding to her gestures, and now she needed to show the same trust in return. The request would likely be denied, but Sarah was prepared to argue her case passionately. If she was right about Subject 47's nature, this could be the beginning of an unprecedented alliance between species. If she was wrong, she would join the 17 researchers who had paid the ultimate price for underestimating the galaxy's most dangerous prisoner. But looking at her notes from the day's interactions, seeing the careful precision with which Subject 47 had mirrored her movements, Sarah was certain she was right. This wasn't a monster to be feared. This was a survivor searching for connection in a universe that had taken everything from it. And tomorrow, she would take the first step toward offering the friendship it so desperately needed. The emergency alarm shrieked through Kepler Station's corridors as Sarah raced toward Study Chamber 7. 3 hours ago, Administrator Zektar had reluctantly approved her request for direct contact with Subject 47, but only under the most stringent safety protocols. Now pirates from the Crimson Nebula had launched a surprise attack on the station, and all research activities had been suspended while security forces scrambled to mount a defense. Sarah burst into the observation deck to find chaos. Dr. Vexcon was frantically working at multiple control panels while other researchers evacuated through emergency corridors. The station shuddered under weapon fire, and through the transparent walls of the chamber, she could see Subject 47 standing alert, its golden eyes tracking the vibrations running through the station's hull. "Dr. Chen," Vexcon called out, his scales flashing urgent red patterns. "All personnel must evacuate to the secure sectors immediately. The pirates have breached the outer defenses." But Sarah's attention was fixed on Subject 47. The creature's posture had changed completely from its usual calm demeanor. Its blade appendages were fully extended, and its shadow-like armor was rippling with patterns she had never seen before. Most remarkably, it was looking directly at her through the observation window, and in those golden eyes was an expression she recognized as concern. "It knows something's wrong," Sarah said. "Look at how it's reacting." Before Vexicon could respond, the lights flickered and went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in red light. Through the station's communication system, they heard Administrator Zektar's voice. "All security teams to defensive positions. Pirates have breached decks 7 through 12. Estimated hostile forces number 43 armed combatants." Sarah felt her blood run cold. Deck 7 included the research sections. The pirates weren't just attacking. They were heading directly toward the laboratories, likely seeking valuable technology or specimens to steal and sell on the black market. Suddenly, the chamber door burst open and 3 figures in dark armor rushed in, weapons raised. Crimson Nebula pirates were known throughout the galaxy for their ruthlessness, and these 3 looked particularly dangerous. Their leader, a scarred humanoid with cybernetic implants, grinned when he saw the researchers. "Well, what have we here?" he sneered in broken galactic standard. "Scientists making new pets? This one looks valuable." He gestured toward the chamber where Subject 47 stood motionless, apparently unaware of the new arrivals. "You cannot take the specimens," Dr. Vexcon said bravely, though his scales betrayed his terror. "They are dangerous beyond your understanding." The pirate leader laughed. "Dangerous? It's locked in a cage like a zoo animal. Bet the exotic creature dealers would pay a fortune for something this unique." Sarah watched in horror as the pirate moved toward the containment controls. If they breached the chamber without proper protocols, Subject 47 would likely react the same way it had to the 17 previous researchers, with lethal force. But these weren't scientists trying to communicate. These were violent criminals who would see any aggressive response as justification for equally violent retaliation. "Wait," Sarah said, stepping forward despite Dr. Vexcon's warning gesture. "That creature is more dangerous than you realize. It's killed 17 researchers. If you open that chamber without proper precautions, it will kill you too." The pirate leader's grin widened. "Then I guess we'll just have to be quicker than those researchers were." He reached for the containment controls, but Sarah desperately called out, "At least let me activate the safety protocols first. If it escapes and kills your team, you'll have nothing to sell." The pirate paused, considering. Sarah used the moment to catch Subject 47's attention and mouth a single word. "Friend." She pointed to herself, then made the same hand gesture against the barrier that had started their communication the day before. Subject 47's head tilted slightly, and those golden eyes focused intently on her face. Then the creature did something that shocked everyone in the room. It placed both hands against the barrier and bowed its head in what was unmistakably a gesture of acknowledgement. "Fascinating," breathed Dr. Vexcon. "It recognizes you specifically." "Enough talk," the pirate leader snarled, pushing Sarah aside and activating the containment release. The energy barriers flickered and died, leaving only the physical door between them and Subject 47. The chamber door slid open with a soft hiss. What happened next unfolded in seconds that seemed to stretch into hours. Subject 47 emerged from its prison like liquid death given form. Its blade appendages extended to their full length, and the shadow-like armor rippled with bioluminescent patterns that created a terrifying display of alien biology in motion. The first pirate raised his weapon, but Subject 47 moved with impossible speed. The blade appendage sliced through the air in a precise arc that separated the pirate's weapon hand from his arm before he could pull the trigger. The criminal's scream was cut short as the second appendage found his throat with surgical precision. The other two pirates opened fire, but Subject 47 was no longer where their weapons were aimed. It flowed around their energy bolts like liquid shadow, its movements defying every law of physics Sarah understood. Within moments, both pirates lay motionless on the deck. Sarah stood frozen, expecting to be the creature's next target. Instead, Subject 47 turned those golden eyes toward her and resumed the same submissive posture it had shown during their communication sessions. It was waiting for her direction. "The station," Sarah said softly, pointing toward the corridor where sounds of battle could still be heard. "There are more bad ones. Hurting people." Subject 47's head tilted as it processed her words and gestures. Then it moved toward the corridor with that same fluid grace. But now Sarah could see the deadly purpose behind every step. This creature wasn't just intelligent. It was a living weapon designed by evolution to be the perfect predator. Dr. Vexcon's scales had shifted to patterns Sarah had never seen before. "Dr. Chen, what have you done? You've released the most dangerous creature in known space." "No," Sarah replied, watching as Subject 47 paused at the doorway and looked back at her. "I've made a friend." Over the next hour, Sarah and Dr. Vexcon followed Subject 47 through the station corridors, watching in amazement as the creature systematically eliminated every pirate they encountered. But it wasn't mindless slaughter. Subject 47 moved with careful precision, avoiding research equipment and protecting station personnel whenever possible. When they reached the main security checkpoint, they found Administrator Zektar and his team pinned down by a group of heavily armed pirates who had taken control of the station's central computer systems. Zektar looked up in shock as Subject 47 emerged from the corridor shadows like an avenging spirit. "The creature is loose," one of his security officers shouted, raising his weapon. "No," Sarah called out, stepping between them. "It's helping us." What followed was the most one-sided battle in Kepler Station's history. The pirates, despite their advanced weapons and tactical training, were completely outmatched. Subject 47 moved through their ranks like a force of nature, its blade appendages finding every weak point in their armor with devastating accuracy. When the last pirate fell, Subject 47 stood in the center of the security checkpoint, its armor gradually shifting back to the calm shadow pattern Sarah recognized from their peaceful interactions. Those golden eyes found hers across the room, and the creature performed the same respectful bow it had shown in the laboratory. The aftermath of the battle brought revelations that changed everything. Medical scans revealed that Subject 47's physiology was unlike anything in the Galactic database. Its shadow armor was actually a sophisticated biomechanical interface that could adapt to any environment or threat. Its blade appendages were composed of materials that didn't exist on any known world. Most importantly, its brain showed neural patterns that indicated not just intelligence, but wisdom gained through centuries of experience. "We were wrong about everything," Dr. Vexcon admitted as they watched Subject 47 voluntarily return to its chamber. "This creature isn't a specimen to be studied. It's a guardian." Administrator Zektar reviewed the security footage in silence before speaking. "Dr. Chen, your approach has achieved what 18 months of traditional methods could not. You have established the first successful communication with Subject 47, and it has chosen to protect rather than destroy." Sarah looked through the observation window at her unlikely ally. Subject 47 had resumed its meditative position in the center of the chamber, but the door remained open at its own request. The creature had chosen to stay not because it was imprisoned, but because it had found something worth protecting. "What do you think happened to its species?" Sarah asked quietly. "Perhaps," Zektar said thoughtfully. "They were the guardians of their world, and when that world fell, this one survived to continue their purpose elsewhere." That evening, as Kepler station systems were restored, and the last of the pirate threat was eliminated, Sarah sat in the observation deck with a cup of Earth coffee, watching Subject 47 through the transparent wall. The creature's golden eyes opened and met hers, and slowly, deliberately, it raised one hand in what had become their greeting. Sarah smiled and raised her own hand in response. In the space of